In this video, I'm going to show you how to fuse and sew your horizontal weaving strips for your Bar Harbor tote. These weaving strips, each one is a continuous weaving strip that goes all the way around the bag. Because it's one continuous weaving strip and we don't have a place where binding goes to finish the ends, we're actually going to sew the ends together to create this one continuous weaving strip. So to do this, it's very similar to the other strips in your bag. You're going to cut, for each weaving strip, you're going to cut 2 strips of fabric and 1 interfacing strip. Place 1 strip of fabric, and I know it's hard to tell on this, wrong side up. So the right side's going to be facing the ironing board. So wrong side up. Place your fusible strip, fusible side down. Unlike the vertical weaving strips, you're going to place your interfacing 1/4 inch in from each end, and on one side it will be a 1/4 inch in from the edge, and on the other side it will be 1/2 inch in from the edge. Go ahead and fuse that, and just baste fuse it. Flip it over to the other side and fuse it more thoroughly. Place your second strip right side down on the first strip, matching all of your raw edges. The next thing that you will do is you will sew on the side that has the interfacing closer to the edge. You're going to sew with a scant 1/4 inch seam from end to end. On the side that has the 1/2 inch seam allowance, you're going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam, but you're going to sew you're going to start sewing 4 inches in from the end, which is right here, and you're going to end 4 inches in from the end. So you'll sew all the way along with a 1/2 inch seam. Then you're going to turn this right side out. Similar to the other strips, you're going to use a turning tool. Now you can use any tool that you wish, but we find this to be the simpler and least expensive way to do this. So take your straw, slide it into in between the 2 right sides of the fabric strips. Place your skewer in and push your fabric and your interfacing through. And it's a little hard again to get it started, but once you get it started, it should go pretty quickly. And this opening at the end also helps you a little bit to pull it through once you see the tip of that blue tube come through. Okay. So there we are. Now, just like the other strips, this will be a little bit curved. So you'll want to iron. Now you'll iron all the way down the seam that is sewn from end to end. On the other side, just iron the part that is sewn. Don't iron the ends that are open. Now I like to do both sides. On the ends that are open, what you're going to do is you're going to pull that 1/2 inch seam allowance that's on the fused strip over the interfacing nice and tightly and iron it. You'll fold the other strip's 1/2 inch seam allowance in under and iron it. That ironing just makes your stitching that you're going to do in the next step a little bit easier. So again, fold that 1/2 inch seam allowance on the fused strip over, iron it, and then fold the excess seam allowance over and iron it. The next thing that you're going to do is you want to make this one continuous circle. So you need to sew this seam together. I find that it's easier to sew the ends that have no fabric fused, have no interfacing fused to it first. So I'll fold out those seam allowances. And there are pictures in your pattern that show you this. So fold out that seam allowance. Now you can't stitch all the way across, so you're going to be stitching this in bits and pieces. So you'll start stitching with 1/4 inch. You'll probably be able to stitch to about here. And then you'll stop and adjust. And then you'll be able to open it up and stitch probably from here to your seam, and then from your seam to halfway between on the other strip, open up that seam allowance, and then stitch all the way across. So you're going to have something that looks like this, where the seam has been stitched all the way across. When you fold that out, you'll fold the seam allowance again over your interfacing side first, and then at the seam, fold your fabric seam allowance. Again, it's 1/2 inch, so there's a good amount of fabric there. Pin it, fold it up, pin it, fold it up, pin it, and the last thing that you're going to do is you're going to stitch very, very close to the edge of that fold, just top stitching it in order to create a circular strip. I iron it one more time after it's at this point before I start to weave, and that's it.